Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. Dive into the dark and twisted world of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, as we follow Rodion Raskolnikov, a tormented man struggling with his inner demons. Set in the oppressive streets of St. Petersburg, this psychological masterpiece delves into themes such as guilt, alienation, and the search for redemption. Witness Raskolnikov grapple with his own morality, as he contemplates a heinous act and deals with the consequences of his choices. This summary aims to guide you through the key events and complex characters, showcasing the powerful storytelling that has immortalized this novel in the annals of world literature.
The Dark Descent of Raskolnikov. A broke, desperate, and deeply angered Raskolnikov plunges into a life of crime. In Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, Raskolnikov, the impoverished and disheveled student, is palpably tormented as he navigates the bustling and oppressive metropolis of St. Petersburg in the sweltering month of July. A perpetual lack of money has left him in daunting debt with his landlady and unable to continue his law studies. Homeless and alone, Raskolnikov seeks an escape from his harsh reality and finds himself consumed by a destructive fantasy of self-importance. Dominated by his grim fixation, Raskolnikov's life heads into a tailspin that ultimately leads to murder. He becomes fixated on robbing the seedy, mean-spirited pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, who he believes hoards ill-gotten gains that could be better used elsewhere. He hatches a meticulous plan, inspecting every inch of her apartment and taking note of where she keeps her keys and money box. With the idea firmly wedged in his mind, Raskolnikov spends his time drinking with Marmeladov, a drunkard who pours out his personal miseries to the infatuated student. Raskolnikov visits Marmeladov's family and is moved by their shabby apartment and terrible living conditions, and out of pity, he gives Marmeladov almost all of the money he received from Alyona. But it's his family's visit that changes the trajectory of his life once more. His sister Dunia's pivotal moment of sacrificing her own happiness for financial security revolts Raskolnikov, who had planned to take money from her short-sighted choice. As the day of the murder approaches, Raskolnikov rationalizes his desire to kill Alyona. Despite a last-minute shift in his plan that forces him to kill Alyona's unsuspecting sister, Lizaveta, too, Raskolnikov accomplishes his mission but is deeply disturbed by the gruesomeness of his actions. However, the world quickly closes in on Raskolnikov, and he starts to descend into a maelstrom of guilt and paranoia as the murder investigation looms, with the police just one step behind him. His mind races, leaving him disoriented and plagued by furtive feelings that exacerbate his anxiety. Raskolnikov's listlessness is interrupted when a myriad of unsavory characters, including the cunning police inspector Porfiry Petrovich, begin trailing him, complicating his attempts to evade them. The trajectory of Raskolnikov's life is put into question as he takes desperate steps to escape the clutches of the authorities and come to grips with his ghastly crime. In a flurry of events that rattle his troubled mind further, Raskolnikov is met with several situations that force him to confront his dark actions and lead him to the realization that his intellectual pride had been the downfall for a wasted life. In a final reckoning of his decisions, Raskolnikov must pay the price for his sins as he's dragged to court, where his past actions come to light. Though Crime and Punishment is a harrowing tale of personal mistakes and introspection, it serves as a cautionary tale of intellectual overinflation, where ideas can be lethal, and judgment can lead a person down a path from which there is no return. Raskolnikov's Delirium. Raskolnikov, mentally unstable, struggles to discern reality from illusion as he navigates through the aftermath of his crime. He faces multiple obstacles, from dodging a police investigation to concealing his stolen goods. Amidst his turmoil, Raskolnikov unexpectedly meets Sonia, a destitute woman who ignites a newfound sense of moral responsibility within him. Despite his numerous attempts to redeem himself, Raskolnikov's guilty conscience persists. As he contemplates confessing his crimes, a tragic event forces him to question the true meaning of redemption. Raskolnikov's recovery and interactions. Pulcheria and Dunia visit Raskolnikov, noticing his improvement but also his concealed guilt regarding the murder. Raskolnikov tells Dunya she must choose between him and Luzin and agrees to attend her meeting with Luzin. Sonia invites him to her father's funeral. He then visits Porfiry, who reveals he is the last of Alyona's customers and asks about Raskolnikov's essay on crime. Raskolnikov defends his theory of exceptional men and ordinary men and the right of exceptional men to commit crimes for a greater good. Porfiry attempts to trick Raskolnikov into confessing to the murder but fails. Twisted deceptions. Raskolnikov encounters an expo, faces Luzin's slander, parts ways with family, visits Sonia, and faces Porfiry's tactics. Raskolnikov's day continues as he collides with many unexpected circumstances. On his return to the crime scene, Raskolnikov meets a stranger who labels him murderer. However, he retorts that he killed a principal and not a person. Things get murkier as he dreams of hitting Alyona with an axe, but she refuses to die. At home, Raskolnikov's escapades continue with the arrival of Svidrigailov, an ex-beau. Svidrigailov seeks to see Dunya and offers a bribe of 10,000 rubles. Later at a family meeting, Luzin, Raskolnikov's arch-nemesis, tries to defame him before his family. But Raskolnikov denies the accusations, and Dunya breaks off the engagement, much to Luzin's chagrin. Raskolnikov informs his family of Svidrigailov's bribe and decides to part ways with them and retire from their company. Later that day, he seeks out Sonia, taunts her for her beliefs, asks her to read the Lazarus section of the Bible, and vows to reveal who killed Lizaveta. Unbeknown to him, Svidrigailov eavesdrops on the confessional conversation from the next room. The next day, Raskolnikov confronts Porfiry and submits to questioning, hoping to discover evidence. Porfiry fails to disclose any evidence, and Raskolnikov almost reveals the murder. However, two men suddenly confess to the crime at the police station, further complicating the story. Sonia's sorrows. Luzin's plot to frame Sonia by accusing of stealing rubles is foiled by Lebeziatnikov. After the funeral of Marmeladov, the landlady uses a thrown cup as an excuse to evict the family. Raskolnikov visits Sonia and confesses his crime, but she encourages him to repent. Sonia's stepmother, Katerina, loses her mind and dies in her room. Svidrigailov offers to help with the funeral and Sonia's step-siblings. Raskolnikov arrives and realizes Svidrigailov knows of his crime. A tangled web of consequences. Raskolnikov encounters Porfiry and admits to his crime. Svidrigailov reveals his dark desires and threatens Dunya, prompting her to take action. Raskolnikov confesses to Sonia after a long struggle. Raskolnikov, in a state of agitation, is visited by Porfiry, who informs him that he knows he is the killer. Although Porfiry leaves without arresting him, he believes that Raskolnikov should turn himself in. At a tavern, Raskolnikov confronts Svidrigailov about his unethical intentions towards his sister. Svidrigailov draws him into an intimate conversation by discussing his dark past and twisted desires. As they leave together, Raskolnikov worries about his sister and follows Svidrigailov until he invites him to take a carriage ride. Dunya, fearing for her safety, confronts Svidrigailov about Raskolnikov's crimes and attempts to shoot him. After realizing that she cannot bring herself to kill him, Svidrigailov gives her bonds worth 3,000 rubles and leaves for America. Later that night, Svidrigailov visits his fiancée and gives her 15,000 rubles. The following morning, he takes his life. As he prepares to leave, Raskolnikov visits his family to ask for forgiveness. At a crossroad, he prays for redemption but struggles with confessing to the police. After spotting Sonia, he finally gains the courage to do so and confesses his crime. Raskolnikov's redemption. After a trial that lasted for 5 months, Raskolnikov is sentenced to 8 years in prison in Siberia. His time in prison is miserable, but Sonia's regular visits give him hope. When she falls ill and doesn't show up, Raskolnikov worries about her. Upon her return, the two weep together, renewed by their love for each other. This marks a turning point for Raskolnikov. The other inmates treat him differently and he realizes that his suffering is the price for a new and happy life. setting the stage for future redemption. Crime and Punishment Overview. Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky is a political and socially critical novel that depicts the psychological turmoil of Raskolnikov as he struggles with his innermost beliefs. The story is set in St. Petersburg and explores the challenges of average Russians in the late 19th century. Crime and Punishment is divided into 6 parts, each with 5 to 8 chapters, published as 12 serialized installments in the Russian Messenger. The narration is predominantly third-person omniscient with a primary focus on Raskolnikov. The dense and psychologically astute prose style closely reflects Raskolnikov's thought processes, evident through Dostoevsky's use of dashes and ellipses in conveying fragmented consciousness. Dostoevsky's writing is realistic in style with references to real locations. The novel also depicts the hardships of the superfluous man, a real-life Russian character that cannot find their place in society. Through various characters such as the Marmeladovs and Luzin, Dostoevsky highlights the costs of extreme inequality and the abandonment of Christian principles. In contrast, the socialist Lebeziatnikov is used to mock the hypocritical radical intelligentsia. The novel also encapsulates Dostoevsky's criticisms of Russian progressivism. He feared that the educated classes were becoming nihilistic and rootless, detached from traditional Russian values and the peasant class that embodied them. Raskolnikov's utilitarianism, which advocates sacrificing one old woman's life to benefit many, and exceptionalism, suggesting great men are not subject to moral law, exemplify this estrangement. Overall, Crime and Punishment is a work of social criticism that diagnoses the political and social ills of Russian society that are still relevant today. It is also a precursor to existentialism, reflecting Raskolnikov's intense neurosis and questioning of commonly accepted morals. The Westernization of Russia. Russia, for most of its history, was an isolated country, run by tsars and their nobility. The Christian Orthodox Church was influential in the agrarian society where serfdom was prevalent. However, Tsar Peter the Great introduced Western ideologies and modernization to Russia during the 18th century. He established universities, constructed a national rail system, and organized the nobility through the table of ranks. Westernization gave rise to a radical and cosmopolitan intelligentsia, while a subclass of urban serfs lived in deprived conditions. Serfdom was abolished peacefully in 1861, but class stratification was still evident. The modernization of Russia brought some industrialization, but the economy was still primarily rural. Dostoevsky's paradoxical beliefs. Dostoevsky's works were influenced by Romanticism, nihilism, and socialism. He criticized serfdom and moral degradation but didn't believe in secularization or Westernization. As a Christian, he questioned the existence of God, and as an imperialist, he didn't support the abolition of tsardom, yet he was a pacifist. Crime and Punishment's literary triumph. Crime and Punishment's reputation preceded itself since it landed on the literary stage. Not only did it receive critical acclaim, but it also impacted 3 different fields: literature, philosophy, and psychoanalysis. Sigmund Freud was among the many who admired it. Numerous adaptations for TV and film have been attempted, but none have risen to the book's glory. Even Alfred Hitchcock shied away from the challenge, knowing it couldn't be improved upon.
In conclusion, Crime and Punishment is a gripping portrayal of one man's descent into crime and the harsh realities that follow. Through Raskolnikov's eyes, we explore themes of morality, guilt, and the possibility of redemption. Fyodor Dostoevsky expertly weaves a tale that captivates the reader, displaying the complexities of human nature and the impact of moral choices on our lives. As Raskolnikov faces the consequences of his actions, we see the transformative power of suffering and the hope for eventual healing. Ultimately, Crime and Punishment is a testament to the ability of literature to challenge and enlighten its audience, remaining a relevant and thought-provoking classic to this day.